There we are. This meeting is being live streamed.
Got it.
So what I'll do is just check on my phone to see if any comments come up. And then we'll see what transpires.
Yes.
Inspire, transpire, perspire, church spire. Oh, shut up, Joe. I hate it. I've got the trickster with me. I can feel it coming in. The wordsmith. Let me just turn this off. It says, got it. I've got it. Hang on. Right, so there we are. Comments will appear here. As I say, how the devil are you? Did you see that word I put up? Right, I can't even remember what the name of the word was. Did you see it? That when I described you as something beginning with N from Norway, I can't remember even the word now. Did you not see that?
Which one? On Facebook?
Yeah.
Let me check.
Yeah, on my have a look, because I thought I was looking for a word to describe, and
it's a new word for me.
Now it's a new word for me as well. Apparently, it's based in Spanish and Portuguese, but it means because I like to put things up so people have to go and Google it, because I'm having to Google it myself, and it means cloud walker, right?
Yes. Oh, I love it.
So that's look. So cloud walker, but it doesn't mean there's one definition that comes up to say that it's somebody who thinks out of the box but is able to bring it back in. How do you? So there you are. That's for you. That. And it's a word I can't even say it. It's hard to pronounce, but get used to it. Right. So Laurie Park Glazener is watching. Hello, Laurie. What's going on in the world? I don't want any personal details, but how are you in yourself?
I am quite well. I mean, it's obviously a roller coaster as always, but I feel what has been happening over the last like 4 or 6 weeks is kind of integrating more. And so I feel like a bit more centered in myself and like coming a bit deeper into my own empowerment, gaining a bit more clarity on things. So that feels good. But there's also, I mean, I probably with that as well and everything that is coming in, very active Kundalini energy these days. Yeah, I'm excited for the time coming, but it's like a deepening kind of the embodiment. I think we talked a bit about that as well the last time, but it's settling more like gradually. But yeah, very much up and down, of course, as always. And
yeah. Yeah. Oh, the information that's coming in is so rapid now. But I'm beginning to sort of get a handle. And just before we came on, I got this in my mind, because it just comes through like you. So I wrote it down, and I'm going to read it out if that's okay. There are so many theories, right, regarding time that it can become overcomplicated, right? And that can obviously block what we need to know, really, because I think the solution is actually very, very simple. The key is in your heart of hearts and to focus on feelings first, not intellect. There's nothing wrong with intellect. It says here, surrender your intellect into the service of your intuition. Develop your own philosophy based upon how you feel, and those feelings will be of courage. So courage is a big thing that's coming up. Care, compassion, and an open and flowing lightheartedness. And I know that that's true wholeheartedly. I really know that that's true. And then it really is, right? So instead of being under the influence of memory and imagination with no balance, right, this is really about time and energy management from the soul itself. Okay. And that's the depth, because anything that we pass on should have some depth and weight, because much of what's going on in the world at the moment is, for various reasons, is very shallow and surface stuff, right? And people are distracted, and rather than go deeper within themselves, they keep going outwards to stuff that's got really no power to change anything. And the only time that you can change anything is now.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what this is about today. And I've spent the last 2 days on this presentation coming up. And I'm saying all the time, are you sure? This seems awfully complicated. And they go, just go and get that one, put that there, do that there. No. So I don't know how it's going to happen, and stuff like that. But so these sessions, lots of people are quite enjoying them actually.
I'm
But
glad.
what I've found for myself is it's all very well having these sort of fantastic thoughts and even being very well tuned into the theory. But if you don't do anything with it, nothing ever changes really. So to me, this is really about taking the action. But how do you get to the information that you need in order to take the action on? And
Mm.
once again is you focus on feelings first and you
Yes.
sink deep and surrender, right? And allow yourself almost like to sink into the depths of this intuitive and inspirational sort of a thing. And it's
Mm.
really hard, isn't it? It's hard to let go of the head because that's been in control for a long time. But look at the
And
job
also
that it's
because it's
doing.
what we have, many of us identified ourselves with. So that feels like really letting go of who we are, kind of, when we start, the journey back into the heart. And that is really the courage, like you mentioned. The courage is to actually sink into the surrender and meeting yourself, facing yourself, and having the courage to be who you are. I mean, we can only be ourselves to the extent that we know ourselves, and we are constantly getting to know ourselves more and more and more because more and more layers are falling off, and also timelines are integrating. So yeah, it takes courage.
It takes courage or it takes desperation.
Either or. Yes.
Because somebody said to me, I'm not a religious person anymore. I used to be. I'm not anymore. But somebody said God was the gift of desperation. It's the gift that takes you to the rock bottom where
Mm.
all you can do is surrender, right? And
Yes.
that's where I had to get to. And part of my job is to help people to hit their rock bottom, right? And
Mm.
sometimes it seems cruel, but in the end, people come back and they say to me, thanks very much for being so straightforward and honest. Because, Kristin, somebody was like that with me and I hated this person. I
Mm.
thought, who do you think you are? Because my emotional self, my child self, my frightened self didn't want to face itself really.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah,
No, I think the closest friends I have are those that are really straightforward with me.
yeah.
They're calling me out on my own bullshit when I'm just, looping in my head or my own patterns, but they're also really supporting me when I need it and they are cheering me on. So it's like it's both that those are the people I want close to me.
I was an expert at changing myself in order to please other people.
Mm,
I get a sense of if I say this will please them,
mm,
right? And that was nothing about being a good friend and sparing people's feelings. It was about sparing my feelings,
exactly.
And I had loads of people. They loved me and everything else, you know what I mean. But I was ducking and diving and dodging and weaving. And if you looked one way, I could look that way with you, and I'd change my story then all the time. But my
Mm,
story doesn't really change anymore. This is who I am, right? As
mm,
far as I've recognized so far, because I'm sure there's more stuff to come up. I don't. It's like the never-ending story.
it is.
But and I'm all right with that. There's nothing in me at all. There's nothing in me that could come up now and shock me or surprise me. And I honestly mean that
Mm,
because some of the stuff I had to face and feel in order to dissolve and let it go, right,
mm,
was horrendous. You know what I mean? And
yes.
if something came up like, don't you remember 3 lives ago, right, you murdered 10 people and all that, I'll go, oh, well, there you go. I'm awfully sorry about that. Show me what I need to do in order to neutralize it, and I'll take the action, right?
Mm.
Because I'm not surprised by anything anymore, right? And that's the truth, really.
Yes, I think if we were involving more than this life when we're talking about this topic, we have all had all kinds of, I mean, we have all been murdering people, we've all been victims, we have all been narcissists, we've all been codependents, we have all been you know, kings and queens have all been slaves. I mean, we've been all over the place. So using, you know, past lives things to sort of, you know, feed our egos, or to apologize, or not apologize, to excuse some behavior in this life, to me is bullshit.
To me too, and I don't think anybody's got this sorted, because you said reincarnation, but you know, some people don't believe in reincarnation. They
Mm.
just believe in time. I think, oh, there we go. Anyway, that's what today's little talk's about, right? And should we put it up and see what happens?
Let's go.
Okie dokie. And by all means, shout, say stop now. I want to talk about that, and I will. You'll have to shout loud, because once I get going, it's hard to stop me. Right. Share the screen, Joseph. There we are. Oh, look, she's back. The professor.
Wow, gotta love
Yep.
it. Freedom in no time. I love that.
Freedom in no time at all. What do you mean? Because there's no time in the now moment. Because there's an expression, isn't there? What's the expression? There's no time like the present. And I say, that's not true. There's no time in the present, right? And I really get a sense of that, you know, when people talk about things like the 0 point and the neutral point and stuff. I'm going to try and explain it to the best of my ability, what that's about. And it's with the prof, the prof and doc, session 5. And that's what this session is about. And I got this today and I thought how absolutely beautiful that is, because this is about the crown, which is the pineal gland, but it's also about the brow chakra. And it's the interaction and the interrelationship between the crown and the brow, which is the third eye. Because science has shown that the pineal gland has got vestigial remains, that means from ancient times, of a photoreceptor. So it receives light, and it's being blocked off. And what's actually happened is, and this will make a lot of sense to people who are sort of already tuned into this, if there was any opposition to us finding out the truth and going forward, there'd be all sorts of nefarious people trying to obstruct the way our pineal gland works, right? I'm not even going to get into that, but that's possibly been happening. So I see that.
That is basically distraction, right? Because once we have
Absolutely.
our intention somewhere else, that's where we're pointing our energy, and we can't be in the present and receiving what is.
Perfect. And it is a distraction, but it's also a deflection. It's a deflection of the light, right? So that we don't receive the full message in order to understand how to go forward. So this is part of a discernment process. We'll probably just do this talk on this picture, you know, but I've got some other good ones coming up as well. But just to try and remind people, part of our process, if we're going to talk about incarnation, is how does all that happen? So this is a DNA. This is the double helix of deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what DNA is. And my understanding is that there are 2 strands, physical strands of DNA, although some people say now that there's a 3rd strand being detected. So it's a tri-strand, but I'm not going to go into that at the moment. So we've got this double strand of DNA that can be identified in the physical world. But some people are saying there's actually another 10 strands that used to be called junk DNA, right? But it actually also contains codes from the past. Now, what I see is DNA is simply crystallized behavior from the past. And it involves, like we do, like we can record at the television program, the audio visual information, we can actually encode complete experiences from the past. So not only our personal stuff, but there's also what's called our ancestral memories as well. So this is really about memory. And in order to go and be free, what we really need to do is work beyond memory. So we're actually working in a completely and utterly different space. And when we're working beyond memory, there's no past, there's no future, there's just the now moment, right? But that doesn't mean to say that we can't be in the now moment and take action to go forward based upon the way what we feel. I'll try and clear this up a little bit more as we go along. But generally speaking, until people realize this and they actually sink into their heart, they're almost like on a revolution, that nothing really changes. Everything's like a groundhog day. We keep being presented with situations, we try different stuff, but the same outcome comes up, and then we try then and we say, the next time I get into a relationship like this, I'm not going to go with a person like that. You know what I mean? And so you get into it, and for the first week or two, right, everything's fine. You think, I've cracked it. You know what I mean? And then after the third week, it all starts happening again. And you think, I'm so unlucky, right? But the whole point is, we need to change from the inside in order for the outside to change.
Yes.
Because this thing works by attraction. It's what our heart and soul attract to us. It's trying to show us what we need to learn, because as we give out, so shall we receive. So that's why we're personally responsible for what's going on in our personal life and collectively the way that the world is at the moment. I haven't even got off
And
this slide yet, but
quite genius, right? If you look at it from another perspective, if you know that, okay, I'm going to incarnate, I'm going to go into this body and I'm going to forget who I am. I'm going to forget everything about why I'm there, everything. Why not put up a mirror so that when I have forgotten everything and I don't know who I am, I don't know what I'm doing, I have tons of blind spots. Why just not make the whole world reflecting back to me what I am, so that I can meet myself in every person, and then I can start remembering and I can start, releasing. It is kind of genius from that perspective.
it's absolutely
Kind
amazing.
of
Look,
annoying from this very human perspective.
absolutely. And the thing is, once we start to point the finger, we've completely just given our power away, and we've become the victim, because we've forgotten that the actual show that's going on outside is actually being magnetized from the inside, because this works by attraction, not by promotion, So, right. And that's the thing, I mean, and that's it. Have you ever noticed that when you've had some courage and you've done something that you've always been afraid of, it's almost like the next day, completely new opportunities start to arise, and then there's like a plateau effect where you think you've got it sorted, and then the next lesson comes in, you know what I mean? So it's almost like it's challenging. It's called the hero's journey, isn't it, really? But let me just go on and where it started from. It starts from here, the I am. And the I am, really, some people call this the great central sun. Some people call it God. Some people call it the great spirit. Call it what you like, but this is supposed to be, and this is only a theory, this is supposed to be omnipotent, and that means all powerful. But not only is it omnipotent, it's omniscient as well, because it knows everything. It knows absolutely everything. Everything that's ever been, whatever's happening now, and whatever's going to happen in the future, right? The I am knows, right? But the I am apparently got bored one day being by himself or herself, and he thought, I'll have to I think I'll divide myself up in a way, and just see, get a bit of fun. And so what happened is, in a great big bang, an explosion, some sort of blissful orgasmic state, it fractured itself into trillions upon trillions of pieces called stars. And those stars were each individually representative of each soul, right? This is the way I look at it. I like the romantic thing as well, because it makes me, and then those stars started to realize that they were lonely too. So they started to gather together and they formed star clusters. And those star clusters then condensed even more. The important thing about this is, this was all energy of a certain frequency. And as it started to move further away from the initial, it started to condense and become more material. So this is spirit, this is material. So the star cluster then formed into galaxies. The galaxies then formed into like solar systems. And here's the sun. This is our sun. And so in actual fact, the great central sun is focused through our sun, and that is sending information to planet Earth. And what happens then is, as the energy then starts to condense even more and the frequency starts to lower, a lower vibration, people call it, then materialization of all these waveforms became particles then called atoms. It's fascinating, this, fascinating, and it really is. Atoms are made up of, right, protons, neutrons, and electrons. And it's the interaction and the shapes of those things and the forces that work upon them. That's what creates us, really. And that's why we're all different, because each star's got a different set of frequencies, impacts upon this, becomes the human body. And this is representative of the human body. And what I was shown today is, and this is, if it's true, and I don't know whether this is true, it's fascinating, because this is the point where the act of creation happens again. And that's at the act of conception. So it's almost like we've got to go and ascend this ladder in order to go back home again. Oh God, I feel like crying by him saying this. So it's almost like, yeah, it's all coming through. So we have to sort of go through the process of creation, but also learn all the lessons and experiences. Then we can transcend that. Then we can come away and we can go backwards as we climb the frequencies and we get back home, So I think that's really lovely there. And the way that we do that is we work through these things called the chakras, the 7 chakras. This is a system I use. It's convenient, but you can see this is the crown chakra, and this is the one that's associated with time, because as we ascend through these different chakras, the frequency increases. This is a base chakra. The vibrational rate increases, and we start to get in touch with more and more information, which I'll explain as we go on. And so really, there's the science of it. There's our sun, and the sun is sending out loads and loads now. The solar spots are increasing all the time now, and the fluctuations are increasing. The Schumann resonance and the vibration of that's increasing as the great shift in consciousness happens. So the sun's doing its bit. These are high frequency, but the further away it gets, the longer the wavelength, the lower the frequency, and the different sort of attributes. And we sort of work on this one here. This is the visible light range. So we go from here, gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, visible rays. That's where our bit is. But what's actually happening now is, because the vibration of the sun's increasing, we're having to surrender and be changed ourselves so that we can handle it, really. And what's actually happening is more and more people are starting to see things out of the visible light range. So they're becoming more clairvoyant and starting to see things. They're starting to hear things much more acutely. Their tastes are changing. So this is about the 5 senses. Yeah. Smell. Good God, you can smell a rat a mile away now. And that's all part of the discernment process. So our senses are also, as the vibration comes and inspires us to surrender and let go, our 5 senses are actually, some people call this extrasensory perception, but I'd like to say, I call it expanded sensory perception, because as we do that, then more information comes in from the cosmos and from the spheres of consciousness, which I'll talk about in a minute. But also we start to get more of an understanding of how this works. But don't get too lost in the theory of it, because it's what we do in the end that's important. So that's that there, Sorry, Kristin.
With the waves there, that it's a really important thing to remember, that the high frequency is when it's the frequency when it goes up and down is it's often, it's not stretched out, and this is not good and bad. It's just because very often the human mind tends to think that high frequency is good and low frequency is bad, and this is what we should think of when we say high and low frequency. It's not good and bad. It's just the wavelength, really.
I agree, and I think we've almost been conned into believing, high and high is good, low is bad. But when they work together, right, that's when we get this reunification. But the thing about this is, all these different frequencies, we've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, but they've also got different frequencies within them as well. There's tiny hues and changes. And each one of us, well, it's like souls, really. Our vibrations may be similar, therefore we'll fit into a particular tribe from the 12 tribes, but we'll each have individual skills and attributes that are unique to us. It's fascinating, like you said before. Whoever constructed this was quite a jolly clever person, really, I think. So that's what happens is this is what's happening all the time, and it's actually impacted upon the Mother Earth. And Mother Earth is also growing. She's got a pulse and a heartbeat of her own. Mother Earth is evolving too. So the whole of the cosmos is evolving as we go forward, right? That's my feeling and understanding. It could be wrong, it doesn't matter. But what I said before was we have to develop our own philosophy for living that gives us more joy, more care, more compassion, self-care, right? If anybody else benefits, that's good. But if we can care for ourselves, then we've got a better chance of understanding how to care for other people then.
Yes.
And if,
It's not
and that's
random that we, landed here in this body. It is a result of focused energy. So when we, it's so easy to get trapped in sort of like oh, I want to get, become enlightened, or I want to heal myself, and I have to like go through all the stages, and I have to like get up there or reach this thing, rather than thinking that up there, but I don't remember. There's something, someone, me in some way, focused all this energy into this point where I am right now. So I am here to be this here right now, not to reach something. And while I'm here in this moment, being this, following my joy, taking whatever arises in front of me and, peeling it away or adding it or remembering whatever, as I'm doing that, I am expanding, which is really just remembering more and more of the totality of who I am. It's not about reaching somewhere because you're not good enough. You are a result of focused energy because you're not random, It's I think it's important to always remember both ways, because we tend to just be like, oh, I'm just this little thing and I don't know, and I have to reach something to be good enough, or all of that is just like the mind games we are playing with ourselves.
I agree. And most of them socially conditioned into us or fed into us when we
Yes.
had no opportunity really to discern, you
Mm.
know. So I think I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So this is okay, it's about focus and laser. It's almost like focusing all these distracted light energies. It's like a prism. When you put white light through a prism, it splits into those seven main bands. But if you put those seven main bands through another prism upside down, it focuses back to white light. And I think that that's exactly what's happening. There's a
Yes.
masculine and feminine components that are moving now, and it's all part of a tuning in and refocusing process. This is, to me, I'm not a religious person at all now, because I got into this quantum mechanics and science and understand, and I love that. I love science, so it appeals to me. Other people might think, what the hell is he going on about? But this is how I see things.
Exactly, and that's the same with the Kundalini. It's the masculine energy feeding in, and there's a feminine energy, and when the Kundalini is rising, it's really those two coming together, and it's a full alignment. It's the essence of body, really.
Absolutely. And I'm going to show you a picture of that in a second. You're almost like preempting what I'm going to say.
Oh,
And no, which is a good thing. So we're going through this sort of, apparently, we're going through this, not apparently, we are definitely going through this great big shift of consciousness based upon an increase in an increase in the vibrational rate of the earth, the sun, and ourselves as well. And so we're moving out of a fear-based mentality, fear and pride. That's really what's constructed that whole world out there. And we're being almost like shown now, let go of this density and just allow this lightness to come in and almost dissolve a lot of these obstructions and obstacles. So I put that up last week, I think. But it's really about circles within circles. And the problem is, we've developed our intellects to such an extent that we think our intellects can find the solution, right? I think that if the intellect is in the service of the ego, I think all we ever do is go round and round and round and round in the same old circle. But if we surrender to our intuition, the intellect's still important as long as it's being guided by our intuition first and foremost. And that's the thing about the ego as well. The ego is important, right, when it's playing second fiddle, not the first fiddle, really.
Yeah, and our intellect is a tool. It's not the truth.
Exactly. So timelines. I said that we talk about timelines, reincarnation, and the present moment or the now moment. And I put this up today because just to try and explain to people who are not familiar with this, in a metaphysical context, that means like a spiritual context. Timelines refer to the idea that time is not strictly linear, but exists as a series of interconnected and coexisting moments. I didn't have a clue what that meant because I thought that time meant, you know, it was all about, there was a horizontal line and you grew like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, and there was no way out of that. But there's also a vertical dimension as well, which I didn't understand. Right. So it all becomes clear in a second. But once I got into this understanding of quantum consciousness and the fact that all sorts of spheres were coming in, you know, it's a bit like when you're really enjoying something and you're lost in something and you look at the clock and you think, where's that 2 hours gone? Well, that's your state of mind is impacted upon your sense of time.
Yes.
And that's all to do with the pineal gland and how that works. So it suggests that all moments in time, past, present, and future exist simultaneously. So that means that everything that's ever been or will be is already out there. The viewpoint challenges the traditional linear understanding of time and encourages a more holistic perspective. Holistic just means taking everything into account, not straightforward.
Awesome, because that actually means that we can do ancestral healing in the present moment. We are not a victim of the past or our lineage. It's amazing.
Well, we are a victim until we realize that it can be changed in the present moment. So the idea would be as well, how do I really get to this present moment? Now, you can read a book by the Power of Now, and you can think that you've got it, because I did. I thought, oh, I'm out of the moment now. I've got to get myself back in the present. Wrong. The only way, in my opinion, based upon my experiences, when you have to completely let go, right, totally and utterly let go, take your head off, throw it away, because what normally happens is your left and your right hemispheres are battling with one another all the time. Past, future, past, future. There's no midpoint. And until you understand how to get into the heart of hearts, right, then you're just going to keep going round and round in a circle. And I realize and I understand people have to be, it's almost like Todd says this a lot, let go or be dragged.
Yes.
You know, and that's what's actually happening now. This tidal wave, right, of truth, right, is forcing people to face themselves. You know, it's all part of a process. It's like the cycles of yoga, the yoga cycles in Hindu philosophy, where there's different epochs of time and the earth change. Anyway, that's another thing. I'll carry on. Well, otherwise we'll never get out of it. Reincarnation, on the other hand, is the belief that the soul, let me just shift this thing up here, the soul or the spirit of a person is reborn into a new body after death. This process is thought to occur over multiple lifetimes, with the individuals experiencing different physical existences and life circumstances. The concept of reincarnation is often associated with karma, and that's almost like saying, oh, you didn't learn that lesson in the past, you bad person, right? Go back down again and start again where you left off. You know what I mean? And people used to think that they had to die in order to be reincarnated to carry on with the journey. And the journey that's more important to me than anything else now is the soul's journey now. This isn't really about the individual person's journey. It's about the soul's journey. And that means something totally different to me now. So, yeah, so I've done that. But now the now moment refers to the present instant. It's the immediate experience of existence. It's what you do when you're not even thinking about it. And people who do sport, they'll understand that they can completely lose their head and just be almost like in this flow, where they're absolutely aware of everything that's going on in front of them without even thinking about it, right? That's this 0 point, you know. And people say that the zero, it's not a vacuum, it's actually full of potential, right? And so you're totally aware of everything that's going on, but you can also, you've got the ability then to tap into what's gone on in the past, right? And actually change it in that present moment. And I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago who's realized now there's something called the gene keys. And she's realized that going back through the gene keys and in meditation, she realized that when she was 7 years of age, she had a tryptophan deficiency, right? And she was able to take tryptophan now and change her diet in order to change the energy of that 7-year-old portion of herself. Don't you think that's fantastic? I think that's unbelievable, really.
Oh, I love gene keys and human design. It's amazing. Love those tools.
Yeah. So we think we know what's going on. I don't. I know I haven't got a clue really, but I'm just scratching the surface. But it's the only moment in which we truly exist, and many spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of being fully present. But you can't use your head to get into the full presence. You've got to let go of your head. That's the important thing. And how do you do that? By focusing on a feeling, by breathing in a certain way, and by becoming more body aware, and also practicing. This is called mindfulness. Mindfulness is just being aware, right, that you're in this present moment and you're just going with it, really, guided by your intuition. That's important, that there's something bigger than us or deeper than us as individuals that will, if we listen in and feel at depth, we'll be almost like moved by this intuition. If you're a Christian person, you say moved by spirit. So some spiritual perspectives suggest that an individual's incarnations, past, present, and future, coexist within the now moment. So it's almost like a nexus point where you can access, based upon certain things, you can access the past, you can bring it into the present, and you can almost get a sense of where you'd like to go to in the future, not based upon fear, but based upon creativity and a feeling of bliss and enthusiasm. And proponents of this
when we hear about the experiences people have with instantaneous healing, that is in the present moment, because it can change. This is epigenetics.
Yeah.
You can change which genes are like on and off, so it can actually change the whole body in an instant. That is like the complete presence, I would say.
No, I agree with you, and I think that you can then get a sense of, right, what needs to change in the external world as well. So different colors, different sounds, but sometimes just seeing something in a completely different way dissolves it. If the switch is on, it needs to go off. That will almost like happen automatically. Your consciousness expands and you begin to see more and more where you'd like to go into the future. It's great, this. I love all this. So that's what we are looking at. We've seen that over the last few weeks. This is really a representation of how it all works. I just want to get really 2 clear points over here. That this is, I put global down there because that's my friend Kate Lumley. It's a global, right? But this is not a flat land. This is a sphere. And the soul is spherical, right? And the way I see it is, if you've got an orange and you put a big cocktail, like a skewer through it, right, from north to south, you could always also put one from east to west as well. So when you're sitting in the middle, in this heart of hearts here, in the soul center, it's almost like being in the driver's seat of a spaceship, right? And so you're sitting there, and then depending on the coordinates that you're given by the commander, right, you can set the coordinates and it will take you back into the past where you need to see a situation that needs correcting. You correct the situation and it changes the future as well. So this is about coordinates. It's not about up or down. It could be south by southwest or north by northeast. Each soul will have a different set of coordinates that it needs to work with. And therefore, it's almost like that they're going back in time to a different place, a different country, a different location, through a different portal, a different Stargate, all that sort of stuff.
And it also invites for compassion for other people, because if we were in the shoes of other people, we would probably make the same choices because we would have a different set of coordinates or, patterns or, really, what we set ourselves up for here.
And I think what I've learned is when I'm in that moment, what I say is it's almost like a little request. You could call it a prayer if you like. Well, I say, please show me, because allow me intuition to guide me and actually guide me to the coordinates then. So rather than me thinking, I'd like to go to that planet today, I wait for the instructions, they're fed in and off it goes, you know. And I don't think, I wonder why I'm going here. It's only when I get there do I realize what the purpose of it really. And so that's that really. So we're in this sort of box of space and time, you know, and apparently in this sort of box of space and time that humans are in now, there's 15 different dimensions. I'm definitely not going to get through all of this here, but I'll just whiz through it anyway. But get back to this here, there's 12 spheres of consciousness. Now, the point I tried to make is, because this is a sphere, this is almost like a skull cap. So if you can take this flat drawing here, place it on top of your head like a skull cap, it'll drop down the sides, wrap around the front and back and underneath. That's where the coordinates are. It's not up and down. It's in a global thing, really. So that makes sense. So, but the coordinates then would make sense, because sometimes we'd have to go south by southwest, right? And it's like in a global structure. That's really quite important, because for a long time, I was looking at this as though like it was Jacob's ladder, but in actual fact, it's more like a universal coordinate. Mm. And we know that the solution is in the heart of hearts. So this is where it starts, you know, with the individual, right? This is where we get on instructions. This is the sperm, obviously, which carrying, no, already the egg, the ovum, the egg has also, it's got a lot of genetic codes already in there from various incarnations or timelines or past, however that works. And then the male comes in and provides this other sort of balancing perspective. But when the first thing happens is there's imbalances and misdirections all over the place, right? And also what I've been shown clearly is that it's at the moment of conception, right? Do we take a snapshot of the universe at that point? And that then wraps up, this is like the myofascial tissue, it wraps up then and produces a child based upon these star and planetary coordinates. And I think that it's the moment of conception, to me, that's more important than the moment of birth, because this is where the creation, right, of the physical vehicle. So this is like preparing the physical body for the infiltration or the embodiment of the soul. And this is how it works, really. In the beginning, really, this is called the singularity, where there's nothing going on. And then conception then causes this bifurcation. And then we go into this bit here. So this is really an egg that's actually in the growth phases. So this is embryonic development. And then we go through all these various stages here. Now, here's a sort of a point. It's not controversial. It's just that different people have different views. Some people think that life begins at the moment of conception. Okay, that's fine, you know. Now, animation means anima, means soul. Okay, some people think that it happens at this stage 12 here, or 11 to 12, when the heartbeat starts, because the heartbeat starts at about 24 days, right? Some people think that that's when the soul inhabits the body. Other people think it's 36 days. You see, that's what I was trying to say before, is there's many theories on this, right? And I don't know what the answer is. And some people obviously think, ordinary planetary astrologers think that the moment of birth really is when the animation starts, and that's when it all starts. So this is who we are. This is what we're becoming. But at the moment, this is just the creation of the physical vessel. And how come some people are born like Jaguars, you know, or Mercedes, and some people come out as like Minis and stuff like that, all to do with what happened in the past, right? And that's the product, really. And also what happens in the womb and in the waters of the womb, that's also impacts upon the way that light is refracted and diffracted. Okay. So just to go on to this here, how are we doing for time? Because I mean, okay, it's 1:45. I'm just going to whiz through stuff for 5 minutes and come back. Is that okay? And maybe we can carry on with some of this next week, possibly. So the human being then's got 12 dimensions, but there's also, it's hard to explain that. Here's the first 3 dimensions here. This is the human physical body. And what's actually being happened now is these outside forces now are almost like pushing the vibration up, so that we're being forced now to go from the 3rd dimension through the 4th dimension into the 5th dimension and beyond. Okay, so there are 5 densities or harmonic universes in the human. Some people will understand this, some people won't. Doesn't matter, right? But what we need to do is, in the ascension process, we actually are being guided, right, through these different densities, and therefore we're lightening up. And it's almost like these grave dimensions affected by gravity are being sort of dissolved, if you like, and we're automatically ascending into different spheres of consciousness. And that's represented by that here. I'm not going to go too much into this now, but just to whiz through here, this is basically what's happening, is that each of those 12 human spheres at the physical level, there's another 4 dimensions on top of that in the invisible realms. And what happens in the invisible realms will filter down and condense and impact upon us physically. And it's only when we get into an open and flowing heart can we get the coordinates to go back in time and to go into different spaces in order to put things right. And that's why a lot of disease and illness is actually happening in invisible realms. And we've tried everything physically, but it's more happening in different aspects of our mind. You know, and until we sink deep enough and we ask questions of our intuition and allow it to guide us, can we actually de-obstruct all the energies that are trying to re-empower us. So that I just put this up here because it's fascinating. Trying to simplify it, you know what I mean? But all I'm saying is there's different colors and different sounds associated with mechanisms that we can use in order to obstruct the flow and disentangle us from the mess we've created generally. So it's about this really, the left brain, generally speaking, until we get a third perspective from the heart of hearts, we just go back and forward. This side's fighting with this side. The left brain and the right brain, they've got different characteristics. This is the masculine side of us. This is the feminine side of us. And we think we come up with a solution. So the feminine says, I'm going to be more, you know, loving. I'm going to try this, that, and the other. So it pushes that information over there, right? For a while it happens, and then the imbalance comes back again. And it's just nonsense, really. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to get perfect balance here. But we've got the masculine side represents that side of the whole. The feminine represents that side of the whole. We've basically really got to take action from here and be guided from here in order for these two to get back together again. So I've tried to put pictures up to explain what's actually happening. And so it comes back to that again now. The crown chakra is associated with the pineal gland. In physical anatomy, the pineal gland's got something called 2 nuclei. They're called suprachiasmatic nuclei. They're to do with the biorhythms of the body. And unfortunately, we've almost been taken away from the natural rhythms of the body. And we've been sort of imprisoned by a linear time structure, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So that would be a false time matrix. Okay. And most of us are actually trapped in that, the 9 to 5 job, and 12 o'clock, it's time for lunch and all that sort of thing. So lots of us are programmed in this linear model, even our calendars as well. January, February, March, April, May. So what's actually happening now is people are realizing that their biorhythms are more associated with the moon and the sun. And they're realizing now that some people are morning people. That's the best time for them to do work. Some are afternoon people, some are evening people. Actually, Ayurvedic medicine understands these cycles only too well. But really, if you're pushing yourself in a time when you've got low energy, it brings illness with it. So if you're not working to your actual natural biorhythms, there's always going to be a mismatch here, right? And there'll always be an irritation. And irritation leads to inflammation. Inflammation leads to problems with the cells and the stem cells. So really the problem is irritation causes meta-inflammation in the body. what we've really got to do is, rather than take tablets and vitamins and all that sort of thing, we've got to sink deep into our intuition and surrender back to our natural timings. And that's why some people will be better off at different times of the day. Their skills will be more pronounced at different times of the day. And that's why we've got to sort of understand that when we get back to nature, different people will fit in at different times. I don't know whether that makes sense, but. And in the end, it's about this really. I just thought to put this up because I like it. But really, this is the pineal gland. And if we allow our biorhythms and we stick to our biorhythms and follow the promptings of our feelings based upon our intuition, then we're much more likely then to feel less irritated, less frustrated, less angry. We can stay more and more at 0 point or neutral point. And therefore, there's not so much irritation going on and causing all the problems with the cells. And then finally, we did that last week. Sound and light, and the language and light, and the sound of light as well, helps to reset us back to our natural, essential, natural balance. And I like that picture, so I don't know what it signifies, but I thought I'd put it up anyway because I just like to pick the colours up. Now, that was quite complicated, but just to go back and just to finish this off, that might appeal to some people and other people might be put off by it, but it's just theory. It was just to show that that's the present theory that I understand. I've developed my philosophy of living on that, and I'm okay with it. If other people see it in a different way, that's fine. It's no problem. I always listen out to what other people say in case I need to adjust my own philosophy, So, did anything come out of that for you, boss?
Oh, I really, oh, there's like so many ways we can take it. What you said about rhythms, I think that's so important because whether it is, the rhythm so-called of society or, whatever culture we're in, the daylight, which is changing all over the planet, especially, in this part of if you're like further north or south, or whether it's the cycle within the body, especially in women, but really beyond all those concepts of the mind, coming back to the biorhythm, it's so important. And I think daring to free ourselves from everything that we read, whether that is what to eat, when to eat, all those things. I was studying nutrition, and it was so much programming on how this had to be. But I think the body really knows. It knows its rhythm, and the rhythm can change throughout life. So it's like being in that side of keeping, listening to the body. What it wants to eat, when it wants to eat, how much it wants to sleep, when it wants to work, when it's inspired, when it's not. And it's not easy, right? Because we do live in some kind of rhythm, most people, with work, and have to adjust to, we can't just go off and live alone because we have to adjust to other things. But always listening, always coming back to following that kind of a rhythm. It's super important because all, as you said as well, all kind of disease, it starts in the field, it starts in the energy. And the more kind of energy or block it gets onto it, the more dense, the more dense, the more dense, and eventually it becomes physical. And the same, I can, for myself, with my own cycle, I can see that it can change with the moon. If I've been off balance in my own system for a while, suddenly it can like take a whole different turn out of normal cycle, and then it will come on the cycle with the moon. So even though the moon is really far away from us,
Yeah.
it
Well, the power of these forces, and that's the next thing that they want me to help people with is the different forces that actually govern our own biorhythms. And if we can, because it says, doesn't it, know thyself, or to thine own self be true. But as you've just said, we've been so programmed, and the society we live in is basically a programmed, unnatural society. And when you consider all the lights, sick building syndrome, fluorescent lights, people working 9 till 5 or doing night shift. It's a bit like, if you go on a trip across timelines. I mean, we've recently gone through this, haven't we? It knocks you up for 3 days afterwards, doesn't it? Because it's interfering with your melatonin levels in your pineal gland and everything. Most people are they're getting tuned into this now. But the solution, in my view, is not to take melatonin supplements. It's to be honest and to reset your biorhythms,
Mm.
So there's my thing, that I think that we can energetically change things without being heavily sort of reliant on external things as well, because I honestly feel that
As well,
if I'm
I
tuned into my intuition, then from an intuitive point of view, that can change my vibration, and that can actually provide me with the energetics that I need, rather than something else.
mm. Yeah, with melatonin, I think that's interesting as well because at a couple of occasions I tried that and I was not able to sleep. I kept awake for, more than 24 hours. It
Right.
woke me up. It had the opposite effect of what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. And this is the thing, about things like scalar wave technologies and all that. It's all very well, but each individual scalar waves might work well for you, but they might freak me out. It's also like the things like, we're getting into these sort of microdosing now of things like LSD and frog venom and stuff like this. I think that we need, first and foremost, is to get in touch with our intuition, which knows us because it is us at a deepest level, and say, what's the best way? I'm not saying don't do these things. I'm just saying, please listen deeply to what your soul is saying. Right. You
Mm.
know, so have you got like some more time?
Oh yes,
Oh, good. All right then.
I do. Um, I was thinking as well when you said this, with when the soul actually inhabits the body. Um, and obviously I don't know what's the truth, but from what I've been shown, when I've been working with clients, when I've been going back, I've been shown things in my own history, I do see it vary a lot. So my perspective on that is that there's no like set point when it happens for all. I think it I think it's very individual. And for me, I have been taken back 3 times, so I do have a almost full memory of my own birth. And when it started coming back, I was at my father's place when the first memory came back. And, I went downstairs to my dad and I was like, hi, when I was born, was it like this and this? Did the room look like that? And, was this person there and this person there? And he was like, I think you should call your mom. She probably remembers better.
Yeah.
And I called my mom and she was like, well, yes, yes, that happened. Yes, that happened, and then a couple of weeks later, there was a new memory coming in and I it was a pretty heavy birth, but those memories really changed a lot in how I saw, big parts of my relationship with my own mom as well, because I saw a part of our contract, and I did leave my body um, during my own birth. So I remember going in and out of my body, sitting with my principal guide, and I think the way all of these things happens is also a part of how we chose, you know, pre-birth to come in and set us up for the patterns, for the, you know, for me, for example, one of the reasons I was shown that I chose this to happen was so I would come in with a full memory that there is a world, beyond the physical, because I was in both of them while I was coming in. So it served a purpose, but of course, the the heaviness on it, especially for my mom, was insane. But she agreed to that. It was a contract to actually help me. She chose to go through those things, you know? So when we get more of those perspectives, it can really change a lot in how we relate really to people or to experiences right here, right now.
No, I agree entirely. And people talk about Akashic records, and just for anyone who doesn't know, we in my view, I had to do a sort of past life review of this, not a past life review of this life. And I had to almost like consciously make a list of all persons I'd harmed or situations that were being presented to me. And I had to take actions or see what I needed to see in order to neutralize that. And once I got to that, there was like a clearance point then. Then I started to get different memories coming in then. And they were from the Akashic records. Now, some people call those ancestral memories, So, I don't know, and it doesn't matter to me anymore. I just trust this process that as I clear stuff up, it's almost like I'm getting closer and closer. My vibration is supposedly increasing, whatever this sort of means. But I start to see how it all works in a more expanded way. And not only that it impacts my physicality as well. And that's what's happened to lots of people. Their DNA's changing now. It's causing physical changes because it's impacted upon all the different stem cells, the stem cells that create skin, organs, pancreas, liver, and all those things are actually being changed now by this increase in vibration. Or that's at least the way I feel that it's happening. I'm not exactly sure about anything, and that's the truth of it. But I'm always willing, right, to keep open and be shown, really, because other than that, I was trapped in the past all the time, and I would be worried about the past catching up with me. And so I'd project that into the future. So because I had these worrying and this imbalance all the time, there was never any opportunity to actually be in the present vertical ascending moments, you see.
I'd be curious to know what your perspective on autoimmune disease is.
Yeah, it's all to do with criticism at depth, really. It's all to do with the self-esteem instinct, and it's about a deep. See, if you're programmed to be the child that was never wanted, and you're told that from an early age, then you take that on board like a record, don't you? And you start playing the same record. So no matter what you do, it's never ever good enough, right? And that always causes, it's not necessarily stuff that's coming from the outside. It's how you evaluate your own behavior. And because you were told you weren't wanted, you were a bad person, you should never have been born, blah, de, blah, de, blah. Not until you get to a place of neutrality or the zero point can you say, hang on a second, right? They're not my thoughts. They're somebody else's thoughts, And so we're programmed from an early age for the purpose, right? Of for various purposes, and we won't go into that, but the whole point is what I realized was that the records that were playing in my head were not even mine. So the thoughts and the feelings that I was having were really second nature. They weren't first nature, and because of that I was always emotionally reactive. I had no self-worth, no self-esteem, and that's because the judgment was going on in my memory banks below the level of my consciousness. And that's why when you get to a point where you just can't handle it anymore, because I tried a couple of times to do myself in properly because I couldn't handle it. Once I got to a point, turn round and face what was really going on with the guidance of somebody who was experienced in this, right? I started to see, hang on a second, this is not me. This is some like sort of programmed automaton, It's called psycho-cybernetics, they call it now. It's where a situation arises, a pattern, and a program kicks off immediately without a second thought. And so mindfulness, as you know, it's creating space in that breath, in that space between breaths, just to stop and say, hang on a second, where did I get this idea from? And it was because I've never had an opportunity to make my own mind up on everything. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, and that also, when it comes to autoimmune disease, that means that you would say it's possible to cure any autoimmune disease in the body.
My feeling is yes. However, because I'm a medical professional, I'll have to say that you definitely need to talk through everything that you're doing with your health professional. bearing in mind that they are your servants and it's not the other way around. You know, because the proper sort of coordination is, it should be a we approach, really. This is what I feel, doctor, and I'm going to try this. Well, why are you going to try that? Well, could you suggest, what about that then? Okay, well, we'll try this. So it's got to be really a balanced approach. Otherwise, you're back in the fight, you know. And some health professionals will say, well, I'm not having it then. You'll have to go and see somebody else. Well, then, fair enough. Go and find somebody else who's maybe a homeopathic practitioner or something like that. That's all part of the process, I feel. But having said this again, Dr. Joe is saying, right, you must be careful and cautious about it and be honest, right? But try and work with an open-minded medical professional.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from my own experience, and of course I am not a medical professor or in that profession either, but it's so often they talk about autoimmune diseases and they say, well, the body attacked itself. It's, you know, beyond resolution. It's done. And I do not believe that. And I think if people were given, you know, just the opportunity to see the potential that even though it's termed an autoimmune disease, it doesn't mean it's, you know, beyond resolution. It can be resolved. It's really deep because it's playing on autopilot. But any autopilot can be turned off and the body can restore balance. I
couldn't agree more. I mean, I believe that all disease, right, creates illness because it creates irritation first. Right, the irritation is an obstruction to the flow of energy. If energy is coming in on one side of the obstruction, there'll be too much high power bombarding cell membranes. On the other side, there won't be enough, so there's an imbalance there. So the idea is to remove the obstruction. If the obstruction's a thought or a program in your subconscious, no matter, it doesn't matter how much medication you're going to take, it's not going to change. Right, this is just my view. Right, I'm just saying, make your own mind up on this. This is what I feel about it. But I feel that the removal of the obstruction, if it's, let's say, for example, you've fallen out with somebody, and every time you think about them, it gives you one of those feelings, right? Okay, the idea will be is, why did you fall out with them? What was your part in it? Go and clean your side of the street. Oh, I'm not going to say sorry to them. Okay, then carry on. Right. And then the illness gets worse. And then one day you bump into them and say, look, I've been thinking about what happened and I can see that I was a pain in the arse at the time and I'm awfully sorry for it. It's amazing how many miracles happen because from the next day onwards, people start and they say, you'll never guess what, right? The illness is going away and it's getting better. So it's what's really happening in those morphic or morphogenetic fields because that's what's impacted upon the DNA. Right. And as you say, it's quite simple, really. Sometimes the DNA is switched on and it needs to be switched off, or it's not on and it needs to be switched on, you know, and it is binary. It's that simple, but you've got to feel your way into it, really.
Which also means that if you are genetically disposed for some kind of an illness, it doesn't mean you have to get it. It's just a matter of whether the gene is turned on or off. And we are really the power of what we turn on and off.
Absolutely, and that's where the epigenetic shroud comes in, you know. And if you think like,
exciting, I love it.
Yeah, if you look at, you know, epigenetics really is second nature. It's the cloak that surrounds us, and it's that we've got to take that coat off, and then the next one, then the next one, until we're completely naked and free. And you know, but it's a process. It's called the hero's journey. We signed up for it to experience all the thinking, the feeling, the situations. We signed up for the whole business, right? Almost as if it was some sort of a game, you know.
Yes. And like we said, the criticism of self creates illness in the body. Criticizing ourselves for having an illness does not repair the illness, because that's also a loop. So many, and I was caught in that myself.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And the only way I get out of that was anesthetize myself with as much drink and drugs and everything as I could. And temporarily that made me feel better. And then I got hooked onto those external things. to try and change the way that my energetics were working, really. I mean, that's why alcohol works, because it's the spirit, you're putting it in, it's a spirit, it changes your energetics, and so it makes you temporarily feel different. That's what people get hooked onto. It's the feeling it gives them, freedom, but then it's trapped you then, So, anybody knocking on the door?
Always.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Because when I was doing that there, I kept having, because my ego coming in, I kept thinking, oh, Joe, I told you there's too many slides here and you're making it too complicated. And I just get another side of me that says, just keep going, because some people will really appreciate this, blah, 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 blah. So I still have that sort of thing going on. But then there's another part of me that just says, just keep going, you know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, I have the same. I was talking with a good friend of mine earlier, and I said, this and this, I went through this situation. And in my perspective, this is okay, this is not okay, this is like, am I like completely, out of my mind? She was like, how many times have you asked me the same thing? You do know, why do you ask me? And I was like, because I doubt myself. And she said, you don't doubt yourself because you know. And I was like, And just something like that, it just blew my mind. I was like, oh, I don't doubt myself, really? She was like, no, you need a validation.
You do. And you need sometimes to get off your chest and share it with another human being.
Yes.
That's important, because you can sort of know yourself, but be going around in your own sort of self circle, which just needs an outside perspective. That's one of the big things.
What she
I had
pointed out was that can create a new loop of patterns of always having to do that.
Yeah.
And
Oh, no, of course. Yeah.
Oh, right.
No, I think more and more I'm starting to feel, because I thought I was, oh, that's it now. I'm totally and utterly open-hearted now and all that. But what's happened over the last few months, it feels like it's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm more or less, I'm becoming a better surfer, really, more than anything else, really. Right then. Am Yesuri Commission Yelaman. Halasur Unique Push and Ursum Dacha Urchenteri in Uklish Mehen. Moyato Kushmelet, Mukrasem Drishelame Tucham Azari Motushim Adi Gramata.
Herokto urikanirat urat aleret enar lerenerat unarat hai krung chernglir neaka heka.
Am Syriam and talk Shirim detective. Halasur did a make cultishan but Tashan Dramaxnaxis and you to Haram Zurim de Tish Elachus Marakadasandria, Ela Tokshin Terapnechai.
Lerui krakni lerat ay erchurkni aleret am ayratu alerkni la churkni lerat eret enia.
Is he be doctrine get up a sander or had something about the Sunday me, horrid something like the Sunday like that's coming a man, did you? Has some road in the kind of mass under record like it's gonna way.
Ne korrelita ayako cherikni aka inko lerek to hama wa lerchurkni leratu amala wa ayrat ayaka ayaka enia.
You miss so rude in Teshere, horrid to something like a tuchum directly and see. But I don't take some agor up with the rishib. Smrik na oor asem tachu in ze muratan skrap tushu muit kasandai.
Nelertu unta rat elerko ne charat ne ata aykrata mo lerata cherku ne ata ayek nea.
Isupadam nikuru. Hesipri nutu shintarat na helabi. Suru na nikara pasunda kakna sura. Hele tuktuk samraget na tukushama.
Ne Eller uto kadar leret aya.
I meti kurso di era matto tuji. Hasira tot hesa maalo ho de morne. Ara sandara hibo hotane sente kla way. Shamta kaskor en yetra batna keke. Hurtut mekta su.
Ne oait ulurtu ayat ayeka.
Get a sort of mod, you got to wonder today. Separate gonna consume scoring Caxacoring they got about the close one today. Hack the hoot, the hack the hoot lame. I'm a Suri, I'm not Torushim, the cat the hill. Sureniela Tahuli Shamwe, Supper Utre, had Separ Hanturo Supanya.
Hollandia kola badjoto. Alabiono totno kola. Hatson torma. Hona nekna ala utuma.
Because Ekor Hucha and Saria, Muratu Chim Egla Suria Murray. Latson Trapa Unterhish Barnede. Alla Suria what could his shamtrek, Okara mostly remain to Rama. Sir Urimata Shibag Errol Tushma Alakatas Fay, Nuda Sambiroch to Ochnahazabe out church.
Tu alera na yala chara. Truka ayenta. Kwaeka. Trukuniaka.
Because Suribo. Halatusum Erochotna Hal Naktushe.
Nereta uchurkaniata. Truchurun teaka.
Oh, my word. Like, my human's throat needs a rest. Like a lightheartedness comes in.
Yes.
And then sometimes I feel like guffawing through that, you know what I mean? And it's like always, you know, I've got no idea. It just feels like the correct thing. But when I do it, I'm this is what's happening to me more and more now. Although I do see quite clear visions sometimes, as more and more of this is coming through, there's more and more visions coming in, you know. And this week I've had, not only have I had the dragons, because nobody get the dragons, but I've also had pterodactyls as well, I think. You know, so real sort of prehistoric stuff coming in and flying in, you know. Now, I don't know why, whether it's because my wife and I watched Avatar 2, you know, The Way of Water, right? And we saw all those things as well, you know. And my head still says, oh, it's because you've been watching that, you know, but I just go with it. And I'm just being honest about it, really.
Yeah. Right now, I was seeing more inside my own head. You know, the glands and, you know, probably neural pathways. I guess that was, you know, all those things moving around, but it was like I was coming deeper and deeper inside the brain, and then I was like out in the galaxies. So it was like the dimensions opened as I was surrendering into the brain. Really fascinating.
It's almost like that picture, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Almost like that.
Yes.
And then the mid bits coming in and the reunification.
Yes.
I mean, I've had this week. I mean, I always find after our sessions, it takes me hours to get to sleep because my head sort of, you know, and then there's loads of more stuff coming in. But, you know, I don't care anymore. And I'm not embarrassed by it in the slightest. You know, once upon a time I was, you know, I couldn't really give a shit now, to be quite honest, you know, because I'm just doing it. But it's expanding my life. It's expanding my understanding. I'm getting more and more information on theoretical physics, and I've always wanted to get my head around that. And it's almost like coming in now. So what seems to happen is, as I do this stuff, it's clearing more and more space for the timelines, and they call it timelines collapsing. But it's like information's coming in waves now to give me an understanding of how this all fits together, you know. And I know that there's just so much to learn. In fact, there's just too much to know. But all we have to do is allow the streams of consciousness to come in that fit with our soul's resonance, really. And then that makes us unique individuals to work in certain areas, and other people can work in other areas, but there'll be a connection anyway between all those things. And I think that's what's happening. In my mind now, I see cells bumping into each other, and then the cell surfaces coalescing and it becoming a bigger cell. So it's almost like we're reconnecting back to that picture. We're on our way home to the reunification and the refragment, the redisenfragment, whatever that word is, putting the pieces back together again by letting go, really, and just enjoying ourselves and expressing ourselves.
Yes.
So, other than that, just being an ordinary day, really.
I love that. Amazing. Yes.
It's been bloody murder, actually, because our youngest cat, Griselda, she's not being too well, and we had to take her to the vets, and our vet's 30 miles away, and because homeopathic vet, and she hates going in the car, you know, so she was panting in the car and all this, you know, and I'm sort of trying to keep cool driving. My wife's trying to keep her going, and it's like, it was a nightmare, to be honest. But you know, those sorts of things, I would have created a big drama just to go out and have a couple of drinks to make myself feel better, you know. But I can see it like coming a mile off now. Right, darling, well, thank you so much. It's so lovely to see you. I love all this.
Me too.
And if you get any themes, chuck them over, and I'll try and simplify them in some way. But I think more and more people are beginning to understand that there's more stuff going on in the invisible dimensions than we can possibly realize, you know, because this apocalyptic times, it means, doesn't it? It means a thinning of the veils. So the filters are dropping off as each veil drops off as well, you know. So
yes.
Right. Well, thanks very much. Keep in touch, and let me know if and when you want to do the next one.
Oh, I'm ready. We'll do the next one. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll be in touch, and thanks everybody for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day, whatever's left of it. Toodaloo. Bye bye.